Welcome back to another episode of the Innovate on Purpose podcast, hosted by Matt Muller,
best-selling author of The Mindful Innovator and Rethink Retail's top retail expert.
We help retail leaders find clarity so they can grow their businesses purposefully.
We will uncover mindful tips, innovative solutions, and purposeful leadership advice and strategies that you can apply immediately to your retail innovation. Are you ready to innovate on purpose?
Hey, before we jump into the episode today, I just wanted to say thank you for hitting the play button. You being here fires me up, and I cannot wait to share with you the insights that are going to make a difference in your business. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and leave a review so I can reach as many retail leaders as possible. They too need to hear this. Okay, let's do it. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Innovate on Purpose podcast. Today, I have a familiar guest with us here today, Ray Ives, who has been on the podcast last season, and he is back to share some more insights from his amazing book. If you have not read it yet, you still need to go out and get it, so make sure you get this book. But today, we're going to specifically talk about his book, Pen of an Underdog, and exactly what strategies we can use from this book to help us innovate within the CPG industry. Exactly how can we look from the underdog mentality to become better innovators in our professional life. So Ray, welcome back. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Matt. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And absolutely loving the digs, man. Background's looking great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I see wonderful book placement there too of yours and my book. So
yeah,
thank you for that.
I always have the Mindful Innovator, of course. Yes.
Loving it. Awesome, right? Well, thanks again for coming back. And I really wanted to dig more into your book. Last time we had a great conversation about the CPG industry and innovation and like the basics of it all. But this time here, I think it's really important for us to take some of the insights from your book and make sure we incorporate that, because the underdog mentality is really just an interesting place to play from. And before we dig into the insights on how we can improve ourselves professionally in the CPG space and even just in your career growth, can you just give us a little pretext here of what is the underdog definition to you?
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing I want to sort of put some context to. I have my own version, my own definition of an underdog. I know it gets thrown out there a lot, but from my book, basically in the prologue, the first paragraph of the prologue is my definition of the underdog. So I'd like to share it with you. So the underdog doesn't feel shame or guilt in the title underdog. Instead, it's like being knighted in the underworld while training for the outer world. The label of an underdog hints at higher potential and has sweet notes of greatness undiscovered. The fire in their heart burns and the smoke sends warning signals to the opponents with supposedly better odds. The eye is watchful and focused on the final goal. The journey ahead is filled with uncertainty. The underdog may be under-resourced, but is unwavering in being overly resourceful. The dog still has fight in his heart and love in its veins. It may have been beaten down by circumstance, lack of birthright oppression, life itself. That doesn't mean its tail stays tucked or the jaw stays locked. It means that it's time to break free from the shelter of limited thought and extinguish the plague of fear. A fight, you say, a fight for life, a meaningful life, an awesome life. The underdog is premeditating and anticipating a felony on circumstantial injustice and waits for the opportunity to be a majestic and inspirational champion.
That is a beautiful definition. And my gosh, yeah. So where is that, what's the root of that definition? Where did that come from?
Again, when I was in between my CPG world, I basically took some time out. I had the luxury to take some time out and I wrote a book. And people call, define the underdog in different ways. You could define it in sports. You can divide it as imposter syndrome. You could define it as maybe a lack of credentials, a lack of experience. So there's a lot of ways to kind of form the underdog. So when I wrote my book, I sort of had that feeling, right? I had that feeling throughout my life. I finished college late. I, started late in my career and then, made some serious moves along the path and kind of shed the coat of an underdog to be where I am today. And so I wrote about it and it was therapeutic.
I love it. So do you feel like there was like, I don't know, I feel like there's a different level between an underdog and then something like right below that to where it's like, I don't know if it's like it's the beaten dog or if it's like the person that's like, you know what, there's just no hope. I'm just full of fear. Um, is there a different mentality from that and then shifting over to like an underdog mentality?
Yeah, for sure. It's all incremental. I think we've all been there. We've all been there in life and in careers and in business projects where one day you're kind of analyzing things and taking assessment and you're far behind, and it's that state of mind is being behind. And what do you do? Where do you go from there?
Yeah, so I guess it could be where it's like, hey, you're an underdog, and you can go two different directions, right? You can either go into the direction of well, tail between the leg, and it's over,
Yep.
or you could figure out how do I come out of this adversity and build further because there is a way out.
Yep.
So that's like that true potential of the underdog, which is so
Yeah.
important.
And I love that, Matt, because it's almost at that point in time where you have nothing to lose, right?
Mm,
Is you have to get moving, and whatever happens is better than the current state of mind or state of your life. So get up and move.
yeah. So like, that's so great, and like, so like, what are some of the things that someone can do as positioned as the underdog? Like, what should be like? Look, I'm not performing well in my job. Odds are stacked against me, but I'm not ready to give up. I have nothing to lose. What do I do? What are the key insight? Like, what do I need to do to move forward to get to the top?
Yeah, for sure. I think you just have to look internally, right? Like turn on that EQ button and take an assessment of yourself and, fall in love with yourself again. I mean, not be conceited or egomaniac, but like look at your small wins, right? Because, or small victories. Small victories lead to big wins. So, you could look at what you've accomplished in life and it kind of is this like self-motivating factor, and then it creates momentum. And say, in the state of mind that one could be at today, you could say, well, you know what, I hit a grand, and you could start with small things. I hit a grand slam in little league, or I won the spelling bee in third grade. Oh wow, I am smart, I can't figure this out. If I figured that out, I could figure this out. you
Mm-hmm.
know if I if I was the third grade champion in the spelling bee, I could be the CEO. And then you connect the dots.
Oh, that's awesome. It reminds me a little bit of like a gratitude practice, right? Where
Yeah.
when I get into like a meditation, sometimes I'll just, okay, what are all the things that I'm grateful for? I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for seeing my son be able to grow up and all these other things. But I love the idea of almost doing like this achievement like ceremony or practice where it's like, here
Yeah.
are all the wins that I've had, like these small wins that I've had along my life that add up to a lot, right? And it's just like it puts you in that, I guess, that success mind state to say, yeah, I can do this. Like, I might be behind, but I can do it.
Exactly. It's like creating that brag sheet for
Mm,
yourself. Again, it's good to be humble, but it's almost good to be sort of reckless internally. Professionals, we create or they create resumes. Athletes create highlight reels, right? So for yourself, you have to create your own highlight reel. You have to create that brag sheet, and it starts small little golden nuggets.
yeah, it's so true. Where it's like no one else is going to do that for you, right?
Yep.
So you have to brand and market yourself to people internally, and it doesn't have to come from a place of being conceited or arrogant. It can just be like, here are the things that I have accomplished. Here is how I have made an impact. And not about like, hey, this is how much money I make, or this is the role that I'm in. But it's like, hey, my contributions did the X, my contribution did Y, and
Yep.
being able to show what was your impact. I think this is so important.
Yep. For sure.
So, so
And
I
it's
want
good
to
to look
go.
back on like anybody's career and look at those things that you're proud of. Like you
Mhm.
kind of gave yourself the, oh wow, I accomplished that moment, right?
Yeah,
I think we all have them as professionals, and I think we live for them. We want to be challenged. We want to be put to the task. We want responsibility. And at the end of it, you count the chips by how the project turns out, what you did. It doesn't necessarily mean the project went all the way and is the next iPad, but it could be significant enough to say, you know what, like job well done, team, job well done.
yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to go and step back into your career. You said you had a late start, and being behind, late start in your career, underdog position. Like, how did you start to come out of that position and use the underdog mentality to innovate in your career?
Yeah, for sure. Again, it takes at a certain point being the underdog. You don't believe it, but you kind of believe it. It's my first job. So I finished college late. I finished college when I was 27 or 28, right? So I got I was behind. And when I got my first job was a category analyst. And I love that story because I remember the day I was driving from Chicago to Minneapolis and I had nothing in my car except like business clothes, right? I travel light. And thinking on that, it was I was working. I got a job at a Fortune 52 company to analyze data, and I was neither an analyst nor a professional. And I took on the role as an underdog and just really gave it my all. I gave 100%, even when the chips were down. And I sat at some of those boardroom tables and knew I shouldn't be there, but I just kept going, kept asking the right questions and working on myself behind the scenes. And so I just love that story. He's like a category analyst. Yeah.
Yeah, and with a touch of imposter syndrome too, right? Where it's
Yes.
like you're there and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't feel like I belong here. How did
Yep.
you get past that feeling? Because I know a lot of people just kind of go in their shell and won't say a word, and they'll be afraid to ask a question because, well,
Yep.
I should probably know this, and it's gonna be embarrassing if I say it. Like, how did you get out of that imposter syndrome?
I did exactly what you said. I didn't say much. I
Mhm.
took a lot of notes and I treated every experience and meeting as a learning lesson. I was the ultimate observer, right? So I sat and observed. And when you get called into meetings, and sometimes it's coincidence, you sit down and all of a sudden you're in the meeting with the CEO. You go back to your colleagues and you're like, yeah, I just had a meeting with the CEO, which in no way were you part of, you were just kind of there taking notes. And that's a small win. That's a small victory to be at that table and to, experience mentorship and, treat it as if. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a true blessing to be able to have those interactions with higher up people so early in your career, maybe not by age, but early by as far as like in the ranks of being able to be in there as an analyst and to be able to have that meeting with the CEO is huge and
Yeah.
definitely something that like if you're earlier on in your career, something you should definitely feel honored to be a part of and just soaking those moments in to say, okay, what can I learn from this situation? There's so
Yes.
many insights that can be said and not said, in that room.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So you start off as an analyst and you start building yourself up. I mean, and now what is your role? You're a VP in sales?
Senior VP, senior vice
Senior,
president. Yeah. Senior vice
senior
president. Yeah.
VP. So analyst to senior VP. And it seems like it might be only a few years since you are so young.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so how did you
Yeah.
do it? How did you get there?
Like everything, it's the hero's journey, right? It's being on the path of continuous improvement and personal growth.
Mm.
It's like one of those things is when somebody gets up and gives a killer speech, say a TED talk, that just didn't happen. They just weren't sitting in the crowd and it wasn't like, hey, come up here and give this speech. It's like behind the scenes, underneath the tip of the iceberg, you're in the lab, you're doing A/B testing, you're learning. And when you apply it, it starts to show. And so throughout the years, for me, I really had to expedite my learning, right? And when I sat in the chair as a category analyst and I had access to, all departments of a Fortune 52 data warehouse, like I knew that was powerful at the time. And I knew that I wasn't going to squander the opportunity to learn everything that I possibly could, understand big picture, how that fits into my role, my boss's role, my boss's boss's role, like everybody's role, understand the business model and all the variables that go into that. So you can see that's a lot that you sort of have to start learning. And the learning has to take place independently. Like you don't have to get permission to learn. You do that independently on the outside. And when your time comes to fast forward, give a TED talk or whatever that is, you're prepared.
Yeah, I love that where it's like you don't have. You don't have to have permission to learn.
You don't have the permission to learn. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
and I'm sorry, but I think of silos, right? Is in standardized procedures. There's a place for that. I get it. But also, it's okay if I'm a category analyst in one department or category, it's okay to ask questions and learn other categories, other techniques and how to be an analyst, other techniques on, okay, I'm an analyst now. What is the accountant doing? What are they doing in the accounting department? What are they doing in the finance department, marketing department? And just start learning those things independently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like an element of curiosity that you need to have that I
Yeah,
think serves the underdog very well.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to have that inquisitiveness, Matt, you and I were talking earlier about, how a 5-year-old is an innovator. They innovate. They think freely. They go from zero to outer space without, considering time or limitations. They're off. They're
Yeah.
outer space.
The best innovators are our children. Absolutely. So
Yep.
creative. No fear blocking them, right?
No fear.
Whatever they want, they go for,
That's
which is
right.
so awesome. So I wanted to flip it over now from we're talking about how the underdog mentality can help you in your career. And it seems like there's a lot about curiosity that comes into play and just making sure that you continue to learn. But I want to flip this over to CPG, the CPG industry. So looking at consumer
Sure.
packaged good, looking at retail and innovation within that space. And you and I have had this conversation before where we talked about innovation, where it's basically just either flavors and shapes, and it's very hard to innovate within that space. I guess, how does an underdog mentality help with innovation within the industry?
Yeah, for sure. I would say this. So the underdog needs vision, right? The ability to see the impossible, whether it's in himself or herself, see it in a new light, a new format, a new you, a new them, right? And so the same is with innovation, like how to turn in the invisible into the visible, the intangible to the tangible, seeing that castle in the sky and building the foundation on earth and build up and build fast. So and I would say this, Matt, the underdog is willing to eat Dumbo.
Wait, is willing to eat what?
Dumbo.
Dumbo. There you go.
The
I've heard that
underdog
before.
is
I've
willing.
heard that.
You've heard that before. So Matt, let me ask you this: how does one eat an elephant?
Oh, yes. Well, that one eats an elephant one bite at a time, very slowly. And that's definitely the way. But it's also, like you mentioned, like having that vision, because if you don't have the goal of, I need to eat this whole elephant, or I can even change the metaphor here to moon, right? So like a moonshot, where if we are going to take our moonshot and we have that vision, this is where we want to go. But you know what? There's two ways that we can get to this moon. One, we can absolutely build a rocket, fuel it up, and then shoot it and hope that it makes it. But the other way to do that is to build a staircase to the moon, right? And where that staircase allows us to take those little steps that build us up to that moon. So it's just a matter of having that vision and then planning our way to get to it.
I
Yeah.
love that, Matt. I mean, I see this is where business and professionalism, for me, that's where the light turns on. That's like, this is fun, right? We're building a staircase to reach the moon. Like, okay, sign me up for that. Right. And that's where, like, I think the underdogs really come alive. It's like, outside of that standardized process, building a staircase to the moon sounds awesome. It sounds fun. It's like, let's get the team together to do this.
Yeah, it's like it creates drive and purpose when we have that vision, right? So it's like, okay, we want to get to that moon, but from the underdog mentality, it's like okay, well, we know we're not going to get to that moon tomorrow, or or anytime in the near future, but what can get us excited along that way and building out those little steps that are going to get us there. So I guess it is kind of like almost like the underdog is a humble approach, where it's, you know what, we know we're not getting there right now, but hey, we got 2 steps closer. And that's amazing.
Small victories lead to big wins. Those 2 steps,
right,
leading to those 2 victories, they're starting to become stacked.
Yeah, absolutely. So specifically within that CPG space, I know, like in your book, you talk about a team that you worked on with a leader on innovation, and just can you tell us a little bit about how exactly that worked out? Like, I know it wasn't like a full-time role for you, but it was like a strat team, right?
Yeah, for sure. And this is one of those times where it was like, okay, we're on to the daily activities, supporting the business, maintaining it, making sure our customers are happy, making sure that the supply chain is working and service levels are high. And so when I was invited to be on the innovation team, I was like, okay, innovation. All right, what are you guys thinking? A rocket to the moon, or are we doing a staircase? Right? I brought a hammer and nails. Let's start building. And so at the time we were looking at popular flavors, right? Popular flavors to give the market what they're asking for, get some incremental sales, get a category lift. And so we went through a bunch of ideas, and we kind of landed on, what we were seeing happening in bagels, and kind of bringing it over to like a take and bake. And so we landed on the flavor and decided it was the right flavor to go to market. And a lot of times innovation is borrowed, right? It's borrowed from other categories within a grocery store. It's borrowed from other industries, right? So it's sort of taking, A and B to get to, synergy to get to D, something like that.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So you took basically learnings of, hey, we saw the bagel category. We see that everything bagel is usually popular in that space.
Yep.
Well, why can't it be popular within our space with a take and bake,
Yep.
and then taking that over to create something new? So yeah, definitely borrowed, but definitely new within that space. And I think what that helps us do within the CPG industry is like it's so important for us to have returns. And a lot of times we can't wait 3 years. We can't wait 3 years to get to the moon, and come up with this new concept that no one's ever been done before, and not even be sure, is it going to be successful? So we have to look and say, okay, what are the ways that we can innovate within the CPG space that's going to almost give us a higher certainty for success? There might be this amazing take and bake product that is like something that's never been invented before, which mixes these different fruits and sugars and all these different things that might be really cool, but we really don't know because we haven't tried it ever before. But we know everything bagels are successful, so why not here? So I think it's so important to, when we think about innovation, is that what are those things that we can learn from other spaces that we can then apply to our space to be more effective.
Absolutely. And, it happens a lot. I feel like in the innovation committee, you sort of get the microphone. So there's times where companies and salespeople are getting feedback from their customers. Hey, we need this, we need this, we need this. And the way those items get vetted is somewhat becomes an impasse, right? So it's customers asking for this. We're looking at our current capabilities and saying, okay, these aren't going to match. We have to walk away from this opportunity. But then it's like, do we? Then the innovation committee all of a sudden has the microphone or the loudspeaker, and the influential are kind of listening, And so the voice that's been there probably the whole time now has a microphone for the right audience.
Yeah. So when we think about on that innovation team, you're coming out with the take and bake everything flavor. Like, what were some of the challenges that the team faced as you were getting ready to launch this?
Yeah. Operationally, do we make them inclusions or do we make them toppings? If we make them toppings, a certain amount are going to fall off during shipping, right? And so what do we do? And then you sort of have to be the liaison between everybody has their metrics. Operations, okay, they have their metrics. Maybe putting it in the formula is easier than putting it on top of a finished good, right? So they have a preference, and you sort of reverse formulate from what the customer wants, and even past the customer, what the market is calling for, and say, okay, the market is calling for these toppings to be on top, not necessarily as an inclusion. And so you have to work through these, the forest of the unknown, right? You have to work with convincing people that this is a good idea and getting all departments to see their own metrics as a win and creating a win-win-win for everybody.
Yeah, it's really important. So the storytelling is a big component as well. So just making sure that the consumer's voice is coming alive within the halls of the company is so important to make sure that you're getting it right.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would see almost where if it wasn't coming from the underdog mentality, it would be like forcing this down the throat of everybody, saying, no, it needs to be a topping because that's what we want to do. And without having that storytelling component of it and being able to convince and influence is definitely key. to make sure that it gets done properly and going through the right channels.
Yeah, exactly. And as the underdog, or as people in innovation, they have to, I would say, transcend limitations, right? It's the heart of an underdog. You know, when you're in this, you can't tire, you can't forfeit, and never surrender, right? And that's like the process of innovation. It sort of needs an underdog to take the enormous task of carrying the team, influencing the influential, selling the story, creating the solution, and then you're involved in collaboration and change management, and collaboration is, learning psychology and emotional intelligence, right? Like, not everybody's motivated by different things, different departments, different metrics. And then, you have change management. Change management is difficult. It's kind of like the change curve, right, Matt?
Mm-hmm.
Is and helping me remember, I forget the 4 degrees of the change. I know the first one is denial.
Oh yeah, yeah. So oh my gosh, I can't remember the 4 off the top of my head as well. But yeah, you have that denial piece of it,
Yeah.
and then we go into, I think it's like anger.
I think it's denial, anger,
Yeah, anger.
denial, anger, exploration, acceptance.
Yeah, and it's a long curve.
Think about what's involved in that. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of emotion in there. Anger is a powerful emotion.
Oh, it is. It is. Yeah. But yeah, anger is definitely a very difficult one to deal with. And how do you, as the underdog, help everyone get through the anger phase?
Yeah. It's a big task. And
Yeah.
you know what? It's one of those things where there's no playbook. There's no playbook in the psychology of this, right? How do you go from, start at denial and then you're in anger? And then how do you get past anger, go to exploration, and then from exploration to acceptance? I think the hardest one is, like, think about the state of anger. And then all of a sudden there's acceptance. Like, you're going to walk out of that fight with a couple black eyes and some scars.
Yes, absolutely. I think I look at it as, like, our role as, like, innovators, is when when you're in that anger phase, it's a matter of, how can I be the guide? They're the hero, I'm the guide. How do I get them through the anger? Just better understanding their anger, and making sure that I can kind of bridge those gaps of saying, okay, well, this is why you're angry, or, just kind of figuring it out. How do we then get to a point where our innovation, or that direction we're moving, is the solution for them that's going to make them even better and thrive? So it's just, it's trying to figure out, how do I just make sure that I have, like, an open ear to listen to them, I think, is the most important thing.
For sure. Yeah. And being mindful, of course, right? Because, people will doubt innovation. They're going to doubt the underdog, and, the underdog, the innovator, has to acknowledge, the doubt, and be self-aware, have situational awareness, and then provide solutions. And again, all this, not an easy task. It's almost like when you think about it, it's going back to the staircase to the moon. Awesome idea. Let's do it. Along the way, it gets pretty tough. You're going to have people drop out. You're going to run out of nails. You're going to run out of energy. You might run out of daylight. It might rain. There might be a meteor storm. Who knows?
Get people right off the steps. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Actually, I have a pretty good example of not having the underdog mentality. When I was launching an innovation, I was doing this in a top 3 grocery store in the US. And it was our first test store. We were doing this new service experience in the deli. And it was probably like the 3rd or 4th store that we tested this new model in. Everything was going really well. And I went to this store and said, hey guys, guess what? We're going to change the way that you are doing your job today completely. And it's going to be so much better. And when I said that, I thought I was coming in as, like, Jesus the Savior. Like, I'm going to fix all of this. Yeah. But that's not how it was received at all. I mean, I came in saying, we're changing everything, your job. And they were like, who is this guy? Why is he coming here and changing everything? Get out of my store.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
They didn't want any part of it. And it was all about the approach. We had a great solution that we were going to share with them, and it was going to make their lives easier. It was going to save them time behind the deli. It was going to increase their sales. It was going to make their life so much better. But the approach and my language was completely wrong, and I had no self-awareness in that situation. Like, I went in there thinking that they hated their job and that this was going to be amazing for them. But when we're dealing with change management, even if they do hate their job and they don't like the way that things are being run, if I tell them I'm going to change their job, they're still not going to be happy.
That's right. Change is hard. Change is hard.
Yeah.
Because change equals, when people, when you take something complex and make it simple, and then they get used to it, right? It becomes like I don't want to say a coping mechanism, but a mechanism for efficiency. And then once they learn that efficiency, to come in and change it, people are going to look at you. It's like, we took this time where we figured it out. We have this. We're efficient. We're more efficient than we were 3 years ago. And then if somebody comes in and says, well, you're going to be more efficient than you are today, 3 years from now, everyone's like, well, we did this song and dance already.
I'm good.
The skeptics are going to come in and, because innovation, sometimes people will perceive that as, you're going to give me work to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And pretty much are.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, there's going to be a huge payoff. And that's the part for a lot of people to see, because during the change, it is very difficult and uncomfortable, even if it is the right thing, or it's going to make their life better at the end of the day. Because I got to change, that makes me uncomfortable. I've built this habit and I don't want to change that habit. So a lot of times, like, whether it's in retail or in CPG or any other industry, like the procedures that we put in place are always hard to break once the procedure's in place.
Yep.
Yeah. So so how do you help, like, get people to a place where they say, okay, I'm on board, I'm going to do this? How do you get them through the anger phase?
Yeah. I think it comes down to is, and I learned this from the Mindful Innovator, is when you go from divergent to convergent, right? So when you're divergent, and it's almost like kind of that left brain, right brain, right? When you're divergent, you're leaving reality to dream, right? You're building a staircase to the moon, and it's complex. Okay. And so some people, they thrive in that environment. And then there's other people that thrive in sort of that convergent, right? Where it's, you're back in reality and it's time to think. And how do we think through and get to simplicity, right? So it's sort of understanding your audience is, bringing the right message to the right people at the right time.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's having that right message for the right people and being more cognizant of just being more self-aware. I think it always comes back. I think we've mentioned EQ like 3 or 4 times during this, 30-minute session here. And it's so important to have that EQ. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's a part, it's EQ also is, an exercise of mindfulness, right? Just to stop, pause, breathe, and, let your mind go for a little bit, let it run on idle and see what the output is.
Yeah. So Ray, I want to wrap up here with just another insight or two here from your book. So as we have here, people that are listening in are from the retail space, the CPG space, innovation. What is the one thing someone's going to read your book? What are they going to learn from it, from your journey? What is the one thing that you want them to take away from this book?
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to drop 2 quotes on you here.
All right.
So from page 52, each person has capabilities and strengths that he or she can't see. We can't experience our potential until it's realized. So courage comes after conquering fear. Okay. That's number 1. Number 2 is get ready to be uncomfortable. Love the feeling of being uncomfortable, because that is the arena of personal evolution. That's what it takes to step into the realm of success. That's page 117.
All right. 2 major insights from the book. Absolutely. That's if you want to be an innovator, you have to have the courage to step into fear. Absolutely. That's definitely a
I got
key.
the 2 books, Matt.
All right.
1,
Yeah.
2. I love it.
Loving it, dude. Loving it. Right. Thank you so much for coming on again.
Thank you. Thank
We
you.
definitely need to do a 3rd episode. I feel like this is something
This
we're
is
just gonna have to,
fun.
totally. It's a lot of fun. We're just gonna have to start our own podcast together. I think that's what we're gonna have to do.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, we have a lot of insights to share. And thank you so much for coming on again. And until next time, thank you. And Ray,
Thank you.
anything
Next
else
time.
you want to tell the audience as far as where they can reach you, and what you got in store?
Yeah, no, I'm on LinkedIn. The book is available on Amazon. The Pen of an Underdog by Ray Ives. Yeah.
All right.
That's it.
Well, get your copy. You also see the link for the book in our show notes, so you can just grab it right below. And thank you all for tuning in. We have made it to the end of another episode. Thank you for tuning in. A couple of things before you go. If you have found value in this episode, I am sure you'll find value in what we have coming up. So please subscribe so you will have access and know when we launch the next episode. Also, leave a review. The more reviews we have, the further our reach becomes, and I truly want this to be heard by as many leaders as possible. Don't hog this all for yourself. I would love to hear your insights on this topic, so meet me on social media at Matt Muller Innovation on LinkedIn and Instagram. And lastly, if you want to learn more about my story and what I can do for you and your company, go to themindfulinnovator.com. I would love to help you innovate on purpose. Until next time, just remember, bring a level of awareness to each conversation, each observation, each moment, and you can create great change in this world. Thank you.